To kneel or not to kneel? That is the question. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're still a subscriber to this channel. YouTube is purging me again, so please check your subscription. Make sure you are. Then smack the bell. Click the word all to get notification of my next rant. Kneeling at football games became fashionable when Colin Kaepernick, the failed ex-quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, began to kneel and protest during the national anthem over what he called the racist problems within this country, and he was not going to show reverence for a flag or an American system that allowed such injustice and racial prejudice to go unchecked in this nation. That, of course, got a backlash from then President Trump. It got a backlash from conservatives and a vast majority of NFL fans, and the culture war seized upon kneeling as a virtue signal of showing whether you were or were not racist. So we had this big brouhaha over kneeling. And then, of course, it trickled into other sports. And then most recently, of course, the U.S. women's soccer team, when competing at the Olympics, not only kneeling, but completely turning their back on the flag during the national anthem. And they got their little fannies kicked, and deservedly so. First time in my life ever, I cheered against the United States in a championship round. That all said, it's okay to kneel if it is in rebellion and protest of injustice. But when kneelers in prayer violate mandates and laws, now they are rebels that must be dealt with. Wait a second. It has been a long tradition in a lot of sports that not only do you have the national anthem and your fight song and cheerleaders, etc., but oftentimes there is a prayer, whether it be from the coach or if the team has a chaplain. But the state of Tennessee decided to crack the whip.
A group called Americans United for Separation of Church wrote a letter to district leaders singling out incidents in Cookeville and at Upperman High Schools. You see the visual evidence. School board's attorney says the courts have consistently ruled that prayer cannot be initiated or led by schools or school personnel.
So after the school board declared that absolutely could no coach or teacher lead these students in prayer, the students took matters into their own hands. After the most recent game in Putnam County between Upperman High School and Stone Memorial, the players, the student attendees, the parents all gathered for prayer at the end of the game. Now there's several hundred people there, and they're kneeling in prayer. Oh, I'm certain the school board doesn't like that at all. And this whole canard, this separation of church and state, which is a bunch of bullhock and is not actually in the Constitution at all. The whole misconception of separation of church and state had to deal with a group of Baptist ministers who wrote to Thomas Jefferson, worried that the government would be encroaching into the church. And Thomas Jefferson, in writing to a group of Baptist ministers, said, no, we are going to respect the separation of church and state. In fact, he went on in the letter to say that the government would stay out of church affairs, but, and these are the words of Jefferson, we need the pulpits of America with moral clarity to make sure that we hold the government accountable. So in other words, the intent of Jefferson was to set ministers' minds at ease that the government would not be encroaching on you. In other words, mandating that you can't have church during a pandemic, but the liquor store next door can be open and the Home Depot across the street can be open, but you gotta close because you're not essential. Was that the kind of government overreach that Jefferson was going for there? Me doth think so. But he was trying to get the ministers, the clergy of the day, to just relax, breathe. We will not encroach on your right to gather and to worship, or in any way try to regulate you or pick one denomination over another and make that the official state religion. That said, we had prayer, Bible reading, Christian clubs, all types of outward expressions of faith and religion in our public schools from their very inception right up through the early 1960s. It was infamous, the late Madalyn Murray O'Hair, America's most hated woman, as she loved to call herself, an atheist, a communist who actually tried to defect to Russia. When she came back from her failed attempt to defect to Russia, she was late getting her son, Bill Murray, no, not the Bill Murray from Saturday Night Live, but she was late getting her son, Bill, registered for school. So off to the school she went to get him registered. And as Bill tells the story, what she heard walking down the hallways angered and horrified her as she heard the Pledge of Allegiance, prayer, the Lord's Prayer, Bible reading, the reciting of the books of the Bible in order, the reciting of the Ten Commandments. And she went up one side, that principal, and down the other. And after he had listened to her for several minutes, and Bill Murray said that he sat there with his mouth shut just listening, he looked at Madalyn Murray O'Hair, the principal did, and this is when principals still had some principle and some backbone, and he said, "Mrs. Murray, the students in the schools of the United States of America have been doing prayer and Bible reading since the inception of the country. And if our forefathers had wanted us to discontinue the practice, certainly they would have mentioned it when they formed the government. But because they did not tell us to not do it, we are going to continue to do it." And of course, that led Madalyn Murray O'Hair to petition through the court system and ultimately to the Supreme Court, who in all of their unelected glory decided that there was no need to have prayer and Bible readings in our public school system. Immediately upon the rendering of that verdict, the media, the press of the day, converged on the White House and asked then President John F. Kennedy what he felt about the ruling. And he said, and I quote, "Americans have traditionally prayed in their homes and in their places of worship and have no need to pray in public in school." Funny, they pray before the start of each session of Congress. Not that it apparently does any good, but they do it. Most presidents have an evangelical council of people who offer them spiritual advice and prayer. Interesting to note that an atheist communist woman petitioned and through the Supreme Court got prayer and Bible reading removed from our public schools. President Kennedy defended that, and then months later was gunned down in the streets of Dallas, and they pinned it on an atheist communist, Lee Harvey Oswald. A little bit of irony there. That all said, I got a simple question. Have our schools improved since we kicked God out of the classroom? I mean, by kicking God, by kicking the absolute moral authority of God and His Word out of our schools, have they improved morally? Are schools safer to go to now? Are kids getting a better education now than ever before? Are they more tolerant? Are they more fill in the blank? Is it better? We all know the answer to that. And God bless these young people. I'm sure not all of them are born-again, Bible-believing Christians. Many of them are. This is Tennessee. It's the Bible Belt. I'm sure there are a lot of teens that were out there and a lot of players who were out there simply because they're always going to be in rebellion to whatever the rule is. I was a school administrator for 25 years. And every once in a while in a staff meeting, I'd have a staff member recommend, we need a rule for this and we need a rule for that. And I'd just, I'd listen. And my answer was always the same. We don't need any more rules. Let's just enforce the ones we've got. And I said, If you create a rule, you are automatically creating a rebel. If you create a rule, you're automatically creating a rebel. I said, any of you ever have to stop any of the kids in our school from going into the dumpster and eating? And the teachers would always shake their head no. I said, but if I go out there today and hang a sign that says, it is against the rules to eat anything in this dumpster, before the end of the school day, you'll have at least a half a dozen kids in my office for disciplinary action because they have violated the rule. And so this idea, though, that some of these kids were out there just because the school board said you can't. Oh, yeah, we can. I love it. It is the spirit of patriotism, which was birthed in a righteous rebellion, and it is alive and well. And for that, I am thankful. I am praying for these young people. I am praying for these parents who across the country are pushing back. I'm telling you right now where the action is school board meetings. Have you watched some of this stuff here on YouTube? Have you watched some of this stuff on Rumble? Have you watched some of the media coverage of this? They are going into these schools. They are demanding get these masks, these face diapers off of our kids and let us get away from CTR and critical race theory and just teach my kids reading, writing, arithmetic, and let's throw the fourth R in there, respect. Respect for the law, respect for history, respect for our country. There is a cold civil war brewing, and I'm telling you, that's exactly the way the powers that be want it right now. It's that game of bread and circus, as we've been talking about, but God bless these young people. On to another topic. Well, apparently Jen Psaki doesn't know what she's looking at when she's watching a video, and apparently many of our mediaites don't know what they're looking at when they watch video footage of something. And so all it takes is one, I'm not sure if this person was woke, I'm not sure if this reporter was just trying to start trouble, or if they're a complete and total moron and don't know exactly what they're looking at. But it took one reporter to see some video footage of border agents on horseback, quote unquote, going after Haitian refugees to come out with the story. They're whipping them at the border. And all of a sudden, the media, doing zero investigation, zero looking into any of this, ran with it. Politicians ran with it. And then we had this whole big brouhaha that we are beating Haitians at the border with whips. And that got Mad Maxine Waters with her bad James Brown hairdo out there talking about it's the return to slavery. And now these are like slave taskmasters and plantation owners. And they're out there with whips, and the comparison she's trying to make there is the white guys are beating on the blacks again. And so Jen Psaki was asked about it at the regular White House press briefing.
Jen, a follow-up question on Haiti. There are photographs and reports of border agents on horseback using what appear to be whips on Haitian migrants. Does the administration view that as an appropriate tactic? Can you speak to that? There are people who are upset about it.
Yeah, understandably so. I've seen some of the footage. I don't have the full context. I can't imagine what context would make that appropriate, but I don't have additional details. And certainly, I don't have additional context, April. I don't think anyone seeing that footage would think it was acceptable or appropriate.
Yeah, she'll circle back and get with you on that. In reality, what was happening had nothing to do with whips. In reality, what was happening is these border agents were holding the reins of their horse. And reins are long, and the reason they whip them back and forth like that, they're not whipping the horse oftentimes in a state where they are having to move quickly, and there's a lot of action going on around them. The horse itself can become confused, may not understand fully what the rider is wanting to do. So the rein going back and forth is used to control the horse. Move this way, move that way, move this way, move that way. It was not a whip, and there's not even a fraction of a video segment here of this rein even touching a migrant. So where do they get that these people are being whipped? But hey, when it comes to the left loons and the Democrats, they don't need actual facts. They'll just make them up as they go.
This video, originally captured by Al Jazeera, shows U.S. Border Patrol agents on horseback trying to stop Haitian migrants from entering an encampment on the banks of the Rio Grande on Sunday. But it's this image, captured by photographer Paul Ratchey, that's led to widespread criticism. Oregon Senator Jeff Berkeley took to Twitter writing, "Use of whips on refugees? Disturbing and unacceptable. This must end immediately." The Intercept journalist Ryan Devereaux tweeted, "Border Patrol agents on horseback cracking whips and charging into crowds of Haitian asylum seekers in Texas, shouting at them to go back to Mexico." And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer tweeting, "The images of inhumane treatment of Haitian migrants by Border Patrol, including the use of whips, are unacceptable." Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, however, is denying that Border Patrol agents use whips, explaining to reporters that agents use long reins to control their horses and not whips, saying the reins were being held by a CBP agent.
Well, today the White House decided to hand down an edict to border security, no more horses. No, I'm not kidding. No more horses. Now, I have to confess, I've been a lot of places, but I have not been to certain regions in Texas along our southern border. But something tells me that there's terrain down there that isn't conducive to a truck or even a dirt bike or a four-wheeler. And so a horse is used because a horse can go over all kinds of uneven, even dangerous terrain. And now that tool has been taken away from our border agents. So let me get this straight. No more wall. These people are allowed to come in. There's no mandate for them to be vaccinated. They're being turned loose in our cities. And let me just say this. There is a way to stop it. Churches, pastors, get involved. There's two reasons that the powers that be right now want this crisis at the border. Three. And the far-reaching ultimate goal is it is about the breakdown of America as it is so that they have the excuse to redo the Constitution, reframe who and what we are. That's the long-term goal. The short, quick goals, and there's two of them. Number one, they want a new voting bloc. And the liberals, the Democrats feel if we just let these people come in and we just filter them out into society, they will vote for us because we're the ones that are going to protect them and feed them and give them free stuff and yada, 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 bazing. So there's that. But there are also people, and they're on both sides of the aisle. Yeah, you know, those fake rhino Republicans, those greedbergs like the Koch brothers, they want the cheap labor. Oh, baby, do they want the cheap labor. So for some within our power structure, there is a definite reason why they don't mind them all coming in. But they don't have to be vaccinated. They don't get quarantined. And so we have this crisis at the border where they're just pouring in. We haven't got enough boats to stop it. We haven't got enough manpower to stop it. And one of the ways it was effective for our border agents to at least get back quickly was on horseback. And now that has been taken away because the willing idiots, the whole woke culture, the whole cancel culture, oh, they're running at him with horses with whip and it's mean and it's all. And so this false narrative gets out there. The lying legacy, corporate, corrupt mainstream media, they run with it. It's complete bullhock. It's an absolute lie. Lie, lie, lie. And they want the whole, we're beating black people. That's what this is all about. And it's one more tool taken away to make America even that much less safe. But the way we could end this, again, there are individuals who have their reasons why they want them here. So church, let's go convert them. Seriously, let's go convert them. Let's go win them to Christ. Let's start discipling them in the Word of God and in good old-fashioned, unrevised American history. And let's bring them through the Word of God and preaching and teaching over to the right way of thinking. Watch how fast the libloons close the border if we do that. That's it. As always, thanks for watching. Again, check your subscription and check out what's going on my other channel from time to time. I do throw things up there, not even from me, that I know can't be shown here, and they get pulled off of social media platforms everywhere, and you've tried to send them out through your phone and Twitter at things, and then all of a sudden it just disappears. Check my Rumble channel. It's probably there.